Let's get more on that decision by the US Federal Reserve to increase interest rates again. And joining me now from New York is Nina Trenchman, who manages the Wall Street Journal's corporate finance coverage. It's great to have you here on Sky News this morning. Now, the idea of increasing the interest rates is to beat inflation, of course, but will it work, or does it simply just, or does inflation simply have to work its way out of the system gradually?
Well, thanks for having me. Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, of course, hopes that the recent moves to increase interest rates will work, even though he also pointed out today that there is a time lag in the data. And so we'll have to see if the recent moves, the one that you just mentioned today, but also last month, are having an effect on the economy and having an effect on inflation, which at 9.1% in June is still very high. The Fed meets again in September, so that might give it a little bit of time to see if economic indicators are catching up and if inflation comes down a little bit. For now, of course, this increases financing costs for consumers, also increases financing costs for companies. The stock market reacted positively today, in part due to the fact that Mr. Powell was reasonably positive about the economic outlook. So it seems that the focus on cutting inflation is stronger for the Fed than the fears around a potential recession. So Mr. Powell today said he doesn't see the U.S. in a recession. We'll see more on that tomorrow when the Commerce Department releases data on gross domestic product growth in the second quarter.
And you've just touched on that very briefly, but could it tip the US into recession? And indeed, what are the implications of that on the rest of the world?
Well, at some point, of course, raising interest rates can result in a sudden slowdown of the economy. That's the big concern that investors and also policymakers have had, to get this balance right between wanting to slow inflation and making sure that it doesn't necessarily lead the economy into a recession. I guess whether the Fed gets that balance right or not, we will have to see, because it's basically raising interest rates whilst it can't necessarily see the effect straight away. So there's always this time lag. A slowdown in the economy, of course, would have not only impacts on the US, but also, as you said, on the global economy, with the US still being a leading economy in the world. We have seen international investors put more assets into the US recently amid fears of a slowing global economy, which is what we've seen with the war in Ukraine, COVID in China, then also rising energy prices. So that has driven the dollar higher, which also has, of course, had impacts on consumers here and also on companies. So at the moment, the picture is sort of unclear as to where the economy here in the US is headed, even though we're also hearing from companies that they're seeing a slowdown in sales. For example, Walmart, Best Buy, Whirlpool have all cut their forecasts for profits this week, given that they have too much inventory and see that consumers are slowing their spending. So we'll have to see whether that's a theme that continues this earnings season. We'll also have to see if companies move to cut jobs more widely. We've seen some companies slowing hiring or moving to selective job cuts, but so far that's not really the widespread trend that we're seeing. And that's also something that the Fed is watching, because of course it doesn't want to increase rates so much that it pushes the economy into a recession. But so far the labor market is looking reasonably strong. We'll also get figures on wage growth on Friday.
Right. Nina Trenchman, who manages the Wall Street Journal's corporate finance coverage. Thanks for your time this morning.